What if the secret to success wasn't necessarily doing more, it was actually resting more? And what if burnout wasn't really a business problem, it was actually an identity problem? Well, these are all topics that me and my guest today, Dr. Shamieka Dean, dive into. She's a transformational catalyst and a business strategist who is challenging the status quo on what success looks like, hustle culture, and where real burnout stems from. So I am blown away by this conversation that we had today. And I think that you are going to love it if you feel like you keep working harder, but nothing is changing. Hey there, I'm Tracy Matthews. I'm a business and reinvention strategist, and I help women who are in the midst of their pivot launch, grow, and scale successful, thriving businesses doing what they love. And I am so excited today to have Dr. Shamieka Dean on the show today. I actually met her in like a podcast meetup randomly online, a digital podcast meetup, and I was very intrigued by what she had to say about resting. Now, as someone who's a high achiever, someone who is always a busy being and going, working out, doing whatever, slowing down is not naturally a strength for me. And what I learned about myself on this episode is actually mind blowing. And this was unintentional, but I feel like I got so much out of this about how I'm showing up in the world and some of the things that I need to tweak and change in order to step into my best, most rested, wealthy self. So I hope that you'll enjoy this episode too with Dr. Shamieka Dean. So before we dive into the episode today, I would love for you to click that little subscribe button and the notification bell if you enjoy this episode so that you'll be notified the next time we release any new episodes on the Creatives Rule the World channel. All right, let's dive in today. Well, I am so excited to be here today with Dr. Shamieka Dean. Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm excited. So we were on this podcast call with a group of podcasters, and I was hearing you share your story about rest is the new revenue.
Mhm.
And I was enamored, and I knew I just had to get you on the show today. So
Okay.
before we kind of dive in to understanding a little bit more about what rest is the new revenue is, why don't you tell me a little bit more about your journey that got you there?
Well, where I'll start is the turning point of really realizing how important it is not to rest just in a physical way, but truly resting in our identity, completely detached from the things that we do and or accomplish. And so my journey was, I always tell this story because I was raised where every Saturday morning we knew in our household when my mother turned on this song called Misty Blue. It was an old blues song. So we knew whenever we heard that playing, we knew it was time to get out the Pine Sol, the Comet, the bleach, because
Do you know that this is my same experience in childhood? Saturday morning, we were like, our friends were knocking on the door and
Mhm.
they're like, we're vacuuming.
Yes, it was cleanup time. And so I took that same tradition, if you will, into my home raising my children. And one day, it was a Saturday, and I was cleaning, and then all of a sudden, I just got this really sharp pain in my chest. And I fell to the floor, fell to my knees, and I
Mhm.
couldn't breathe. And
Okay.
as I was laying on the floor, unable to breathe, couldn't really scream or cry out, my daughter happened to walk by and saw that I was laying on the floor, asked, if I was okay. And I just said, I can't breathe. So I was rushed to the emergency room. Long story long, after all of the tests that the doctors did, the specialist, the diagnosis was stress. And the
Wow.
doctor said, if you don't do something differently, I don't know what you're doing, but if you don't do something differently, you're not gonna make it. And I'm young, I'm vibrant, and I'm looking at my two little glam princesses that, my daughter's two girls, and I'm thinking about them, and I'm thinking about my children who, still have a lot of life to live, and all of the things that I would miss out on if I didn't rest, if I didn't take care of myself. And so rest is the new revenue from the physical aspect became not an option, but a reality, a priority that I had to do something different because I came from the hustle and grind culture doing all of the things. And yes, I was successful. I've had as much as a 300K day, right, in my
What?
business.
Love
So
that.
it wasn't a matter of did the hustle strategies work? It was more, what are the hustle strategies costing you? And that is
Yep.
why rest is the new revenue. It's not just about relaxation or taking getting many petties and taking medications, which, like you heard me say on the call, I love a
Yeah.
good medication,
Yeah.
right? But it was a way of living. And it is the foundation for success that does not cost you yourself, your children, your spouse, your relationships with the people that love you the most. Because when it's all said and done, no matter how much money we make, and this does not mean money does not matter, let's be clear.
Mhm.
But when we are done with our work on this earth, the people that really love us and the impact that we're able to make is not going to be about the money. It's going to be about who we are, the presence that
Mhm.
we added to their lives, the value we added, to their lives. And so that's what started this journey.
I feel that so deeply. And I think this is part of the reason why I wanted to have you on, because a couple of years ago, my partner Jason said, "Babe, we need to talk." And one of the things about my relationship with him is that I was in my 40s when I met him, and I was really calling him in. I was single for most of my adult life after I got divorced when I was 30. And this was like it for me. Like, he was my guy. And when someone says to you, "We have to talk," nothing good is happening after that. And he basically was like, "Are you having an affair?"
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, "No." He's like, "Well, if you're not having an affair with someone else, you're having an affair with your business," because I was so burnt out and like ingrained in that. And so
Mhm,
I'm so curious to learn more about your rest as the new revenue method.
mhm.
Are there pillars or anything like that? Like how did this kind of come about? People
Yeah.
need this right now. I feel like burnout is like such a big thing that's going on.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things about burnout, and when we think about burnout, we often think about burnout from a systems or a
Mhm.
strategy issue, but burnout is an identity issue.
Yeah.
It's not a business issue,
Mhm.
right? Because a woman doesn't work so hard and so tirelessly and continues to push herself beyond capacity just because she loves her business. It is
Mhm.
what that business has now identified for her. It
Mhm.
is how her worth is attached to her work and not her worth being inherent. And so, until you resolve the identity issues, no amount of task management, no amount of sabbaticals, no amount of teams that you add, team members you add, no amount of software is going to solve the issue. Because what's going to happen is, even when you free up the time on your calendar, because you've been identified by what you do and not who you are, you're going to fill that calendar back up, right?
It's so true.
You're going to jump in there and help the team when the team is top tier and they are fully capable of doing the things that you're paying them to do. You're going to find yourself finding a reason, and it's a justifiable reason. That's the tricky
Yep.
part. It's always a justifiable reason to get back in there and burn the midnight oil again,
Mhm.
right? And so that's why most people have cycles of burnout, or why they revert right back to the thing that caused the breakdown in the first place, because they're using a surface level solution for a soul level problem. It's not about what you're doing, it's about who you believe you are when
Mhm.
you're not doing what you're doing.
Okay, you're speaking to so many people right now who identify this has been I'll be honest, like, my business was my identity for a long time, and I'm
Mhm.
done with that. Like, it's no longer I am Tracy Matthews, and my business does not, like, provide my worth or anything like that. And I do also know, as someone who has been an entrepreneur for 30 years and had my identity so wrapped up in my business, and then feeling like I'd failed if the business failed, or I was a successful person if my business was successful, or I
Yeah.
was worthy if my business was successful.
Mhm.
How do you unwind that?
And that's a really good question. And I just actually posted, and I was talking about this earlier today, because one of the things that we have to begin to challenge are the belief systems that we build upon, right? And it's not just a single belief, it is a system that your beliefs are now supporting the behavior that you're operating in, right? And so when a woman sits down in my chair or she sits across the screen from me, my job is to help her first understand the belief systems that are driving the behavior. So, in other words, what is the ammunition behind your ambition? That's the very first thing.
The
Okay?
ammunition behind your ambition.
Behind your ambition. Because when you're not honest about why you're doing what you're doing, you're just going to continue to do the same thing because it is justifiable. Now, let me explain what I mean by this. So, most of the times when you ask a woman, especially if she's a woman who's married or in a relationship or she has children or whatever, when you say, why are you building this business? Why do you have these massive and major goals, right? We have what I call is a justifiable reason for that. And that sounds something like, well, I want my children to have a better life than I had, right? Or, I want to create a different legacy for my family. So all of these sound very noble. They sound very good, right? And the reality is, most of these belief systems are borrowed. Most of these
Yes.
goals, or reasons are borrowed from people before us that tell us that
Mhm.
you're not worthy or you're not making a significant impact in the world unless you're doing it for your children, unless you're doing it for a different, legacy. And so one of the questions I always ask them is, if you're doing this for your family, why is it costing you your family to do it?
That's an interesting question.
Right?
Why is it costing you your family to do it?
The thing you say you're doing it for, why is it costing you that? Do
I have to
you
be
think?
honest, I'm doing it for myself and I am my partner and my family for a certain respect, but I think for me, yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to like dig into that one.
Yeah, I want you to sit with it, right?
Yeah.
Because our safety mechanism, right, is always the default response that makes us feel noble and honorable and all of the things that society would deem as what we should be, how we should be, what we should do. And here's the thing, there's nothing wrong with creating a better life for your family. There's nothing wrong with wanting to create a different legacy. Some of our legacies, if we're honest, they're just, those before us were like, if I could have been born into a different family, I probably would have, right?
Mhm.
So I do get that. However, again, if it's costing you the very thing or the person that you say you're doing it for, then you have to be honest with yourself about why you're doing what you're doing. Okay.
So how did you get to that conclusion for yourself?
So I got to that conclusion for myself by examining everything that I had been taught about what success is, what it looks like,
Mhm.
and what it takes to get there. So that goes again back to those belief systems because again, most of the belief system that we carry on or that we're operating in are borrowed from someone else's experience,
Right. So
right?
how would you express that yourself now? Like what would you say you're doing your business for?
So I'm doing my business. Number one, I'm doing my business because my business is an extension of who I am. It doesn't
Mhm.
define who I am, right?
I love that. Yep.
Yeah, doesn't define who I am. So the way that I show up in the world, everything you see me producing at this point is simply an expression of my core identity.
Mhm.
I'm not using any of these things to validate me. I'm not using any of these things to be applauded, to be approved, or for any accolades. If they come, cool. If they don't, when I look at this woman in the mirror every day, every night, I'm cool with her, right? And
Yes.
so but that doesn't happen until you can truly separate yourself from those things, those external things that everyone says makes you you, right? Makes you a good woman, makes you a good wife, makes you a good mother,
Wow.
all of those things, right? I'm still great if I was not a wife. I'm still great if I wasn't a mother. I'm still great if I never produced another dime in my business. I'm great because I was created to be great. I'm not great because of anything that I've done.
You're inherently worthy
Absolutely.
just by being here.
Just by being here.
That's
And my
amazing.
presence adds value to any atmosphere I go into, right? So
Mhm.
when I go into the room, I don't go in seeking for anyone to tell me that, oh, wow, you're good, you're great. I don't go into the room seeking those things. But when I go into the room, because I know the value that I hold and that I carry, I know that whomever I encounter, I'm leaving them greater than they were when before I met them. I know that I'm adding value to their life when I walk into that room. I know the atmosphere and the very air that people breathe is going to be different when I step into that room. And it's not because of the money in my bank account, right? It's
Right.
not because I'm a wife. It's not because I'm a mother. It's not because my business is booming. It's none of those things. I already know it inherently. So I
Mhm.
don't seek anything to make me feel like I belong in the space, right?
Right. What would you say to someone who's like literally feeling like they're at rock bottom right now when it comes to their burnout or feeling like they can't rest or they're so ingrained in their business? Like, how do you start? I mean, you started mentioning some of the ways to untangle that, but is there like, how do you just start identifying and asking, like getting to a place where you can ask yourself those deep questions when you don't even necessarily see it for yourself?
Well, the thing is, when you're in that space, because I think the rock bottom moments are the most defining moments, right? Because the
Mhm.
rock bottom moments begin to strip us of all of the things that we thought we needed to be enough, right?
Right.
So when you sit in that space, it is your most authentic, it is your most pure, that's the purest space that you'll ever be. Now, it may be the most painful, right? It may be painful, but it's also the most pure space that you are. And so when I look at this woman, I look at her, and the first thing I'm going to tell her is that your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. That's the first thing I'm going to say to her. The reason I'm going to say that to her is because I need her to understand that nothing that she had or nothing that she feels is missing or is lacking removes who she is, right? And the value that she holds. And so the other question, well, I didn't say a question, that was a statement. But the question when she's in that space is, a lot of times we think about, who do I need to become? Right? Like that's one of
Mhm. Yep.
the things that we're taught. Well, it's about becoming the woman, or who's the woman. No, who do you need to unbecome?
Mm.
Who do you need to unbecome? Because
I just got the chills for that one.
yeah, who do you need to unbecome? Right? Because the version of you that created what you created up until this point was probably based on what somebody else told you made you worthy. So who do you need
Mm.
to unbecome? Because
Wow.
who you were before you were ever created, before you were formed in your mother's womb, was everything you needed to be at that moment. At the moment of conception, everything you needed to be was already there. Everything you needed to already be valuable was already there. You were already her, right?
Yeah.
And so if we focus on being instead of becoming, we'll recognize that our power to create all the other things was in who we were, in our being, not in our doing.
Someone said to me, I was at a plant medicine retreat maybe a year and a half ago, and the facilitator's like, this was like sort of towards like the end of this severe phase of burnout that I was in. He's like, you came into this world to be a human being, not a human doing.
Doing.
And that
Yeah.
really like stuck with me. I was like, oh my gosh. And I've said that so many times
Mm-hmm.
since then, because we sometimes, like as high achieving women, like we are just like doing, and our achievements seem to be the thing that validate us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like there's only so much of that you can do. And it actually, I personally feel like when you get into that space, you end up blocking wealth.
Oh yeah.
What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I don't think wealth is something that you create. I don't. I think that wealth is what you attract the more you decide or know that you are enough. I don't think it's something you have to create, right?
Hmm.
And so when we do get in this space of forcing and manipulating and making it happen, we actually block the flow
Hmm.
of ease. We block the flow of abundance, as some may call it,
Right.
because you're in the way.
Hmm.
Right? You're in the way. Now, this doesn't mean that there aren't things that you do, but it means the posture that you're operating from could either block the flow or break through for the flow to come to you. Right? And so when I'm looking at women who are, I have to make it happen, I have to make it happen. Well, if you believe it's already yours, why are you making it happen? Does that make sense?
Yeah. How do you combine so I love what you're saying because I do a lot of like I'm super into the woo like manifestation stuff and I do a lot of neuro reprogramming and all of that stuff.
Mhm.
And when you're working with someone or someone in your community and they're kind of in this space of like doing all the things, like what's the balance of like inspired action versus like just believing it to be true?
And see,
Because I
I
think
believe in aligned action, right?
yes.
I don't believe in manifestation in the sense of like making it, happen
Yeah.
yourself. I do believe though in aligned action. So whenever I'm faced with doing anything, right? The first thing I ask myself, is this something you really want to do? Right? That's the first question. Because
I
a
love
lot of
that.
the
Is
things
this
we're
something
doing,
you really want to do? A lot of
yeah,
us
is
do
it what
things out of
you really want
obligation,
to
right?
do? We think that because we do things that, because what are we taught? Do what you have to do now so that you can do what you want to do later. I don't believe that.
I don't
I believe
either.
you should start doing what you want to do now so that you can continue doing what you want to do later, right?
So
And
good.
so a lot of the things that we implement and that we do are really based on someone else's path to their success. It's their path. It's not yours. So you have to, is that really what I want to do? Okay. Now, then after you ask yourself, is it really what you want to do? You have to ask yourself, why? What is the resistance here? Because that resistance could very well be fear. Is it fear that's saying, I don't want to do it because you think that it's not going to be successful? Or is it truly completely misaligned with how you want to live your life?
Mm.
That's the question. So that's where I would actually have them to start.
How do you guide people in determining if it's fear versus misaligned?
Because number one, everything, our body reveals everything to us. First of all, I'm a person of faith, right? So I believe I'm always going to pray first, and I want to ask, God, if I'm in alignment with His will for my life, because I believe that His will for my life has already been planned, predestined, and it's going to prosper.
Mhm.
That's it. That says it. That seals
Yep.
it, right? And so again, our body begins to tell us the truth that our mouth will try to convince us of otherwise, right?
Mhm.
It speaks to us more than anything. And I believe that God created the body to do that so that all of these things work in alignment. They work in sync. And so if you are getting ready to do something and everything your body is saying, no, 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 there's
Yep.
a reason it's saying no, right? There's
Exactly.
a reason that your body is screaming at you, don't do that. So listen, to what your body is saying, and then be honest with yourself. I think that in the world of success, we have been taught to lie to ourselves so much and to deny the truth that's always speaking to us.
Mm.
And if you do anything long enough, it becomes a habit. Whether it's a good habit or a bad habit,
Yep.
it becomes a habit. So if you keep suppressing the truth that you will see it, you're going to continue to see that showing up in your life. Long ago, I always questioned hustle. I always questioned this struggle, this strain, this pain is the prerequisite for progress. This, suffering is the prerequisite for success.
Hell
I
no.
have always questioned it. My mind was like, this doesn't make sense. So basically, you're telling me, hurt yourself, and then you're going to make a lot of money. Come over here. We hurt ourselves. Like that's how I was thinking about it in my mind, right? But because at that time, I, for one, wasn't bold enough to stand in my own beliefs and my own truth. Two, I didn't see any blueprints around me that represented what I felt in my heart was true. And the
Mhm.
reason we don't see blueprints sometimes is because we are the blueprint, but we have to be bold enough to be willing to build it. So I just kept saying, this does not make any sense to me.
Right.
Like it just made, I was like, so you mean to tell me I just need to hurt myself? Like self-inflicting pain is the only way? Are you sure? So what is true for you? Because there's the old saying, if there's a will, there's a way, right?
Mhm.
But we've seen things shift and change. Someone just has to be bold enough to say, you know what? That may be the way you're doing it, but that's not going to be the way that I do it. I'm not doing it that way. And whatever I have to do to find the way that aligns with me and how I want to live my life, I'm willing to do that. But most of us, we desire so much to be accepted
Mm.
that we're willing to suffer through something that we know until we get to a rock bottom moment where it's so painful that the rejection doesn't even, it doesn't even measure
We're
up.
like,
We're
I should
like,
have just gotten rejected like 6 months to a year ago. Just kidding.
yeah, I could have just done that. But when we have those moments, those are the defining moments. Those are the moments that we really put our feet in the sand and say, I'm going to find a way to do it the way that I want to do it, the way that aligns with me. Right. And when you stop believing that it can't be done that way, you'll find a path to do it.
When you stop believing it can't be done that way.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Find a way to do it in flow.
Yeah, you'll find a way to do it. Because
Okay.
one of my favorite scriptures is ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be opened unto you. If you ask enough questions, if you keep seeking and you keep knocking, guess what's going to happen?
It's going to be revealed.
Every single time.
Every single time.
Every time.
So what would you say to people who, we've kind of talked about this a little bit. They're in a state of burnout. They need more rest and they need to relax more. How can you kind of like put this into your schedule so it is a prerequisite and start shifting before maybe you even are ready to do it? Because I think like the biggest hang up is people are like, well, I've already done this way. And I know from personal experience, when I think back to myself like 15 years ago, if I stopped doing it this way, then everything's going to fall apart. But I kept doing it that way and everything fell apart.
Still fell apart.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So what would you say to that person who's like, I can't, like, how do you take those little baby steps to start giving yourself the break, the more flow?
The first thing is not that you can't rest. It is what's your resistance to rest, right? What is your resistance? And I actually have a quiz that helps women to identify that, like their rest resistance and their rest archetype, because they work hand in hand. Okay. So when you understand why you're actually resisting rest, it actually helps you to develop the right pathway so that you can live a rested lifestyle. Now, the biggest thing is that you have to stop seeing rest as a risk and understand that rest is actually the foundation for more revenue, not a risk to your revenue. Because rest is only a risk when you've attached your identity to your work. It's only a risk then. Because people whose value and identity is not attached to what they do, they find it easier to take the time off. Okay. They find it easier to set a lifestyle, because when you use it as a reward for hard work, which is more than likely why you keep saying, well, I can't, because this is how I'm rewarded for the work that I do. So now I can't rest or I'm going to lose everything. Is that actually true? So again, we're back to that belief system. Who told you that? Who told you that?
Yeah, that it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting question to ask.
Yeah. Who told you that?
Because my next question for you, it's like, so I consider myself, I'm about to say type A, but it's not really type A, because I'm more motivated by experiences and having fun than I am by achievement, which is a little bit of a different thing. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason why I launched into entrepreneurship many, many years ago, like 30 years ago, was because I wanted to have fun doing what I was doing and live a creative life where I got paid to do that.
Right.
So for people who are, maybe a better word to say this is, are high energy, maybe they consider themselves type A, they can't sit still. I love taking naps. It's like my favorite thing, but like people who like to be on the move and they just like to be busy all the time because it makes them feel they just can't rest. How do you embark a version of rest that works for them? Does that make sense?
So you said something very, very telling. You said because it makes them feel, right? So what is the
Mm.
feeling that they're avoiding?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's the feeling they're avoiding,
Yeah,
right?
it's interesting. When I talk to people like that or me, I mean, I'm such a different person than I was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoy taking naps. I love taking vacations but I do work a lot because I there's something ingrained in me and I'm going to ask myself all these questions after
Mm-hmm.
that makes me feel like productive or something in
Hmm.
adding value and putting things out into the world.
Right.
But I have created some forced boundaries
Mm-hmm.
recently
Mm-hmm.
of like I stop at 6, like I'm not working late into the night. I have
Mm-hmm.
dinner
That's
with my
good.
family. I make dinner most of the time. You know what I mean? Like things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some baked in things. It's almost like maybe they just need a hobby, a different hobby or something to do.
And see, here's the thing. So one of the rest resistance types is stillness. Is a rest
Yeah.
resistance
That's
because
probably mine.
stillness makes you feel unproductive, right?
Yeah.
Stillness makes you feel like you're missing out on something.
Mm.
Stillness makes you feel like there is something that you need to feel, right? Like avoid, like there's something that you need to feel. So you occupy the spaces, the voids with something, like with doing something. Okay. But stillness resistance type also reveals that there is something that you are avoiding feeling.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay.
And so that's why it's important to understand what is the resistance to it, because it's not just that you enjoy doing, not saying that you don't, right? So I want to make sure I'm clear here. It doesn't mean that you don't enjoy doing those things, but there's still something that you are resisting in the process.
That's a powerful lesson because I know a lot of people who are listening to this feel like they're busybodies like me.
Hmm.
I intentionally create space in the morning to be still, but sometimes if I start activating my brain, it starts going all over the place. And one of
Hmm.
the lessons that I've gotten lately is that I've heard from spirit. Like my version of praying is like similar to yours, but like asking and just praying maybe in a different way.
Hmm.
One of the lessons that I've gotten is just that I need to be clear and still
Hmm.
sitting to be able to hear the downloads.
Hmm.
And
Because you
so,
can hear when you're constantly moving, right? You don't create space to receive
right.
when you're constantly moving. You don't
Hmm.
create the space to receive. And so a lot of the times the reason why we do keep doing moving and we are, busybodies is because there is a breach of trust.
Okay.
There's a trust factor, another layer of trust that needs to be deepened.
Trust in yourself. Trust in.
Whatever your trust is. For me, my trust is in God, right?
Yep.
So I trust myself as I trust my relationship with him, right? So I
Mm.
found that in the areas I didn't trust him, I was performing. In the areas I didn't trust him,
Wow.
I was
Okay.
doing so
Wow.
much more to make things happen. But the more I trusted him, the less I even felt I had to do. And guess what happened? I didn't have to do as much to get what I wanted, and I always got more.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
it's
it's
trust.
trusting. Trusting. That's huge.
Hmm.
Huge. So, what are the different types?
Okay, so we have 5 different rest resistance types. So one is self sufficiency, right? And so this is the person who has built their success on the belief that if you don't handle it, no one will, right? So you basically become your own safe haven. You're your own, you make sure everything is done. You can't depend on anyone, okay? And then we have significance. And this is where you feel like if you are not producing, it's that question, who am I? Am I still valuable if I'm not producing,
Hmm.
right? So you want to be known and seen for the work that you do. And then we have survival. So this one is where most of your life you've kind of spent it moving from urgency. So for you, rest is not just a risk, it actually feels unsafe. It feels dangerous.
Hmm.
And then we have stillness. So you've learned that movement is productivity. If you're not doing something, you're going to fall behind. And then the last one is security. And so this is where you've built your success by like constantly securing the next level. So this
Hmm.
also kind of feels like a threat, like rest is a threat to you.
Right.
So if I know, because I have to secure, I have to make sure I have to meet this next, this next milestone. So those are the five main, rest resistance type. And for each rest resistance type, you have your rest archetype, which is your most rested, most powerful, most fulfilled version of yourself. So when you go through the process, it will not only reveal to you the rest resistance type, but your rest archetype and what you need to do to start operating in the highest version of your rested self.
Okay. I love that. I love
Thank
that.
you.
Okay. So where can people take that quiz?
I'm going to link it to my bio on Instagram, Facebook. I'm not sure if I can do it on LinkedIn. I think I can. LinkedIn is my newer platform that I'm just currently building, but it will be in my bio on both Instagram and Facebook.
Okay. And we'll also have it in the show note link so you can click in
Yes.
the show notes as well.
Mhm.
Well, Dr. Shamieka, thank you so much for being here. You are amazing. Can
Thank
you
you.
restate your Instagram handles and everything so people can find you if they're just listening to this right now?
Yeah. So Dr. Shamieka Dean on Instagram and Shamieka Dean on Facebook, LinkedIn, all other platforms.
And do you have any final words for anyone who's feeling kind of in that stage where they need more rest?
Let me see. What would I say to the woman who knows she needs more rest, but she's probably having a bit of resistance? Rest is not a risk. Neither is it a reward for hard work. Rest is your
Mhm.
superpower. It is your strength. It is your strategic advantage to make more, sustain what you've built without sacrificing yourself, your seed, your sanity, or your spouse. So get some rest, sis.
Get some rest, sis. I love it. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for watching the show today. This is Tracy Matthews signing off. Until next time, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about how I'm helping women in their reinvention season, head on over to tracymatthews.com/reinvention season and listen to my private audio series where I walk you through my 3-stage reinvention process, and it's free. Thanks so much for listening today. Ciao for now.